Hello, and welcome to Boring Stories for Sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us to a quiet corner of America, to a small town nestled along the banks of the Great Ohio River. We are traveling back to the mid-1960s, to a time and place where the rhythm of life was, for the most part, predictable and calm. But for 13 months, this ordinary town became the heart of an extraordinary mystery. Our story is not one of kings or presidents, but of everyday people, factory workers, shopkeepers, and teenagers who found themselves confronted by something that lay far outside their collective experience. It is a story about how a community responds to the inexplicable, about how whispers can grow into a legend, and how a series of strange and unsettling events can leave a permanent mark on the soul of a place. We are going to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to explore the year of the Mothman. They are large, round, and they glow with a hypnotic red light. They are not like the eyes of an animal caught in the headlights. They seem to glow from within, like hot coals. This is not a ghost story, but a historical account of a phenomenon, a strange chapter of modern American folklore pieced together from eyewitness reports, official documents, and the quiet memory of a town held in the grip of a shared, unbelievable experience. It is a deep, primal sense of dread, a cold feeling that has nothing to do with the temperature of the night. It begins to follow your car, its red eyes fixed on you as you accelerate down the dark road. It keeps pace with an effortless, silent speed that defies logic. Then, as you reach the lights of the town, it veers off and disappears back into the darkness. It is the chilling, instinctual knowledge that you are looking at something that is profoundly wrong, something that does not belong in the known world. There is no need to follow every detail, no puzzle you must solve. It is a cold night in November 1966. You are driving down a quiet country road just outside of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It is not spread like a wildfire, but like a slow-moving fog, creeping into every corner of the community. It is discussed in hushed tones in the local diner, over backyard fences, and on party-line telephones. At first, it is a local curiosity, but as the sightings continue, the whispers turn into a low, steady hum of collective anxiety. The quiet, predictable rhythm of life in Point Pleasant has been broken, and the town finds itself living under the shadow of a pair of glowing red eyes. The year of the Mothman has begun. Two young couples, parked in the TNT area, a local man digging a well. The stories are all remarkably consistent. The tall, grey shape, the massive wingspan, and the two burning red eyes. At the edge of the woods, caught in the sweep of your headlights, a local newspaper reporter, seeing a pattern, gives the creature a name, inspired by a character from a popular television show. He calls it the Mothman, stands a figure. It is not a man, and it is not an animal. It is tall, perhaps 7 feet, and grey. It has the shape of a man, but with two huge wings folded against its back. The world beyond your headlights is a deep, rural darkness, the skeletal branches of winter trees stark against the night sky. The road takes you past an area the locals know as the TNT area, a sprawling, overgrown landscape of abandoned munitions bunkers from the Second World War, now a place of silent, concrete domes and creeping wilderness. Simply allow the story to unfold at its own unhurried pace, a gentle current to guide your mind towards rest. So I invite you now to settle in. Let the weight of the day begin to lift. Imagine yourself now, and you see its eyes. The only sounds are the low rumble of your car's engine and the soft crunch of tires on asphalt. And then you see something. As you slow the car, the figure turns its head. A feeling washes over you. It is not simple fright. The creature unfolds its wings, a vast, leathery span, and rises into the air without a sound. You are not the only one. In the days and weeks that follow, others in and around Point Pleasant begin to see the same thing. The first witnesses go to the police, their voices trembling as they recount their impossible story. The name sticks, and the story begins to spread. In any small town, the local newspaper office often serves as the community's central nervous system, a place where the threads of daily life, the triumphs, the tragedies, and the mundane are gathered and woven into a collective story. In Point Pleasant in 1966, that role was more critical than ever, and at the heart of it was a journalist named Mary Hyre. Mary Hyre was the Point Pleasant correspondent for a larger regional newspaper, the Athens Messenger. People who were hesitant to speak to the police, fearing ridicule, found they could speak to Mary. She would listen with a patient, non-judgmental ear, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. She was a respected and well-known figure in the community, a professional journalist accustomed to reporting on town council meetings, school sports, and local social events. Sometimes the line would be filled with a strange electronic buzzing or a series of high-pitched beeps, like a distorted recording. Witnesses who had seen the Mothman would later report visits from strange, unsettling men. They were not overtly threatening, but deeply unnerving, their presence adding a new layer of paranoia to the already tense atmosphere of the town. The story was no longer just about a strange creature in the woods. It had become a complex puzzle involving strange lights in the sky, phantom phone calls, and unsettling visitors in black. The reports of the unsettling men in black became more frequent and more detailed. These were not government agents. The accounts described figures who seemed to be playing the part of a human and not playing it very well. They were often described as having unnaturally pale or olive complexions, with stiff, robotic movements and a flat, emotionless way of speaking. Mary Hire was the chronicler of Point Pleasant's strange year, a year in which the entire town began to feel as though it had stumbled into a story that was not of its own making. They would ask bizarre, sometimes nonsensical questions and display a strange ignorance of everyday objects. But their visits always ended with a similar, veiled warning that it would be better for the witness to stop talking about what they had seen, that it was an omen, a supernatural harbinger of doom, drawn to a place that was preordained for a catastrophe, perhaps even trying, in its own terrifying way, to issue a warning. They were left only with a collection of bizarre and unsettling experiences, and a shared, unspoken fear that all of these strange warnings were pointing towards a single, catastrophic event, lurking just over the horizon. The encounters were less physically threatening and more psychologically disorienting, designed to create a feeling of confusion, fear, and paranoia. They often traveled in large, pristine, black cars that looked out of place on the rural roads. Certain individuals in the town began to report having strange, vivid dreams that seemed to foretell future events. The most famous of these accounts centered on a figure who called himself Indrid Cold, a supposedly non-human entity, who was reported to have made contact with a local man delivering cryptic messages and warnings of a great tragedy that was to come to the Ohio River Valley, a place where beings from another reality were temporarily breaking through into ours, explaining their disregard for the laws of physics and their strange non-human behavior. As the weeks turned into months, the fabric of reality in Point Pleasant seemed to grow thinner, more porous. The residents found themselves living in a world where the inexplicable was becoming almost commonplace, and the men in black were its agents, here to monitor or control the situation. The story was no longer just about what people were seeing in the woods at night. It was about what they were seeing in the sky, and who or what was visiting them at their homes. They were described as having oddly smooth, pale complexions and a stiff, unnatural way of moving and speaking. They would ask probing, sometimes nonsensical questions about the witness's sighting, and then issue vague but firm warnings to stop talking about it. At other times, a strange voice would whisper warnings, telling her to be careful, that she was being watched. Her office was a familiar stop for residents with news to share. The high strangeness that was gripping Point Pleasant began to touch her own life. Reports flooded in from all over the area, describing silent, glowing orbs that would hover in the night, or large, dark, cigar-shaped objects that would glide soundlessly overhead. These were not simply passing airplanes. Witnesses described lights that would change color, move at impossible speeds, and then vanish in an instant. For many researchers, including the author John Keel, who is now heavily investigating the case, these aerial phenomena were a crucial clue. It suggested that the Mothman was not merely an undiscovered animal, but was perhaps connected to this larger, stranger activity in the skies. The rhythm of her life, once dictated by the predictable calendar of a small town, was now shaped by a steady stream of residents eager to share their own unsettling experiences. Her notes, once filled with the simple facts of community life, were now a catalogue of the extraordinary. Detailed descriptions of the winged creature, accounts of strange lights in the sky, and a growing sense of a shared, inexplicable dread that had settled over the town. She became the keeper of the town's strange new secret, a diligent chronicler of the impossible. But in the winter of 1966, the news that began to filter into her small office was unlike anything she had ever encountered. As the official reports of the Mothman sightings began to circulate, Mary Hire's office became the unofficial headquarters for the phenomenon. Her daily work transformed. But as she continued to document the sightings, Mary Hire's role began to shift from that of a simple observer to a character within the strange narrative itself. She started to receive peculiar phone calls at her office, and then came the visitors. The phenomenon of the men in black, as they would later be called, became a recurring feature in the stories she collected. Mary Hyre reportedly had her own encounters with these figures. The sightings of a winged creature were just the beginning. The Mothman sightings were often accompanied by another, equally baffling phenomenon, strange lights in the sky. And as the strangeness in the sky grew, so too did the strangeness on the ground. They would visit the homes of Mothman witnesses, often arriving unannounced. Amidst all of this, another layer of the phenomenon began to emerge, that of prophecy and premonition. With all of these overlapping and bizarre events, a number of theories began to circulate, each trying to impose some kind of order on the chaos. Some believed the explanation was extraterrestrial. The Mothman was an alien being. The lights were its spacecraft. Others, like John Keel, favored a more complex theory of interdimensional beings, that Point Pleasant had become a window area. And then there was the theory that the Mothman was not a cause, but an effect. Alien, dimensional traveler, or Omen. No one in Point Pleasant had an answer. For 13 months, the town of Point Pleasant had been living in a state of quiet, nervous anticipation. They are thick with strange sightings and unsettling warnings of a coming disaster. As the year 1967 drew to a close, that feeling of foreboding reached its peak. Then, on the evening of December 15th, the abstract premonitions tragically converged with a very real, very concrete catastrophe. The Silver Bridge was a local landmark, an aging but essential artery of commerce and daily life that spanned the Ohio River, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. On that cold December evening, during the 5 o'clock rush hour, the bridge was crowded with cars filled with people heading home from work, running errands, or doing their Christmas shopping. For many, the creature was not a monster to be feared, but a tragic omen. The theory posits that the Mothman was not a malevolent being, but a harbinger of doom, a supernatural entity drawn to the site of a future catastrophe. The creature has become an icon of paranormal culture, a symbol of the profound and often unsettling mysteries that lie just at the edge of our understanding. All of the strange events, the fear it induced, and the cryptic warnings were perhaps a desperate, otherworldly attempt to alert the population to the disaster that was to come. The glowing red eyes were not a sign of aggression, but perhaps a reflection of the death and tragedy the creature foresaw. A massive rescue and recovery effort began, but the cold and the dark made the work nearly impossible. It is a story that begins with a pair of glowing red eyes in the darkness, unfolds into a year of widespread paranormal activity, and ends in a very real and human tragedy. Whether it was a series of misidentifications, a case of mass hysteria, an extraterrestrial or interdimensional event, or a true supernatural omen, we will likely never know. The shadow of the Mothman no longer falls over that small town on the river. All that remains now is the peace of this moment and the gentle invitation to sleep. Here, in the stillness of your room, the world is quiet and comprehensible. The warnings are silent. The story is over. In the end, 46 people lost their lives that evening, their ordinary commutes ending in a sudden and terrible tragedy. It was a scene of complete mundane normalcy. At approximately 5:04 p.m., a sound like a single loud rifle shot echoed from the bridge's steel superstructure. It was the sound of a single eye-bar in the suspension chain, weakened by decades of corrosion and stress, snapping under the heavy load. In a cascade of failing steel, the bridge began to fold into itself. The strange phenomena that had plagued the town for over a year came to an abrupt and total end. The Mothman was not seen again. The strange, silent lights vanished from the skies. The men in black ceased their unsettling visits. The year of high strangeness was, without explanation, over. With a slow, groaning roar, it surrendered to the pull of gravity. Within a minute, the entire central span of the bridge and the 36 cars upon it had plunged into the dark, icy waters of the Ohio River. In the moments that followed, the town of Point Pleasant was thrown into a state of shock and grief. In the weeks and months that followed the collapse of the Silver Bridge, a strange and profound quiet settled over the region. This sudden silence gave rise to the most powerful and enduring theory about the Mothman. The story of the Point Pleasant Mothman is a strange and unsettling chapter in modern American folklore. The legacy of that strange year is undeniable. The town of Point Pleasant has embraced its peculiar history, hosting an annual Mothman festival that draws visitors from around the world. But the strange lights in the West Virginia sky have long since gone out. Let the red eyes close. Let the mystery fade into the darkness. Sleep now.